And, yeah, it's all just based off of what do you think they're going to do in the NFL. And then you just group them that way, and then you put them in proper order in each round, and then you go pick them.
And for time's sake, because like you said, we can get into this thing and be there for hours and hours and hours. But when you look at over the years, right? 2009, you kind of got into the radio, and then let's just say 2012, you kind of really got into scouting and things of that nature. When it comes to the Cowboys, right, and you look at how they've carried themselves throughout the draft over the last 10 or so years, would you say that this is a team overall who nails the draft, who has kind of figured this draft things out? Because you have some teams, you're just like, boy, they get into the draft, they get what they need, when they need it, and those players actually come in and contribute right away and for a period of time.
Ravens, when Ozzie Newsome was the GM, and probably still today, they were studs. They were studs at it.
Yeah.
Ozzie Newsome's the GOAT.
Yeah.
Cowboys are really good at it. If you can find a team that's better than them over the last 10 or 12 years, it's a real short list. They're good at it, for the most part. They're really good at it when you let the dudes who do it. Cowboys also have a tendency to let coaches have big voices. And sometimes that's great.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's bad. Dan Quinn has a big voice.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's good. And sometimes that is bad. Sometimes you trade up to the 5th round for a guy that probably wasn't going to get drafted because he had long arms. Dan Quinn loves him some long arms. I think Will McClay and their scouting staff are really, really good, and you'll get a little bit hit or miss sometimes when coaches are involved. Like Will McClay will take the fall for it because he's a stand-up guy and a sweet man. Will McClay wasn't the one that said T.J. Watt can't lean forward and put his hand to touch the ground. Rod Marinelli did.
Right.
He's like, we can't take T.J. Watt over Taco Charlton because he's a stand-up guy. Scouts didn't say he can't. Coach did. He was like, no, that's a stand-up guy. We're looking for a hand in the dirt. That's what we're looking for. But no, overall, I mean, you can look at the list of over the last 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and go however you want to grade it, Pro Bowls, All Pros, whatever. Cowboys are right at the top. They're really, really good at it.
You found a love in analytics, right? And you kind of –
I like it.
You like it a lot.
I like it.
You like it a lot.
Yes, I think that it definitely has value and that it's worth knowing and having that context in my sports conversations.
Like I always say that I went to public high school and a public college. I'm not smart enough for analytics, so I don't kind of dive into that space. But how much has analytics kind of changed sports? Like, because it's in everything. It's in baseball. Yeah. It's in basketball. It's in every single sport.
Well, it changed basketball.
I mean,
huge.
They're like, hey, 3 is always greater than 2. Take as many of those as you can.
Threes and dunks.
Yeah, threes and dunks.
Like if you look at a plot chart or like a shot chart from both of those would have worked. So don't think I messed up. Plot or shot. Either one of those charts. Like 25 years ago in the NBA, it's like the dots are everywhere. And then more recently, the dots are literally all around the three-point line and all around the rim. It's like that's what we do because they discovered, hey, these are the 2 most efficient places, which then, and here's the beauty of analytics, is eventually the teeter-totter just goes like this, and then somebody goes, what if we jumped on the other end? And then you find the great mid-range players, and defenses don't really know how to defend it because they're not used to. And it's like, so there is a game to it. It's not like you're going to analytically, well, I mean, it can give you advantages for sure. Teams who initially were willing to go for it on 4th down because the math said, hey, if you do this 10 times, you're likely going to convert it 6 or 7, and that's going to add this many points most likely, and you're going to do this. Like that has changed football, and now the Cowboys are actually at the forefront of it. The Cowboys are one of the teams that does it the most.
My next question was going to be, what NFL team do you think is kind of the leader in the clubhouse of saying their offense and defensive mindset is, the foundation of a lot of it's built on?
This is going to hurt me. Because one of the guys at the forefront, and they've failed a lot lately, and so it makes it look like if you wanted to be like, I hate analytics, like Brandon Staley at the Chargers has been one of the guys that was like, okay, if that is what makes sense to do, we're going to do it. But they've also been an organization that hasn't drafted well, and they suck, and now they're not doing so good. And so now every 4th down that they don't make it, they're like, there goes the genius. I'm trying to think because there's a few teams. I think Minnesota now has a GM. I think it's Minnesota has a GM who like his background is numbers. Mm-hmm. They're analytically driven, whether it's the value of a draft pick in a certain round or drafting by positions. Like the Cowboys have a department of it. They're definitely not at the forefront of implementing it in every way.
Mike
but
said
they
he was
do it
in
in some
the
ways.
Mike said he was in the garage many years ago. He was working on that stuff in the garage out there in Wisconsin. It was Canton.
His fourth down stuff comes from somewhere. That's changed.
Yeah.
They do it a lot. They have the crew and they have the information, but they're not perfect with it because I would point to this year's draft, which, and I'm cheating a little bit, and it's a little bit results-based, but I mean, I documented who I would pick at the time, and never in the first round would I have wanted them to pick a run-stopping defensive tackle. That's a needs-based pick for a player that brings less value than any other position that's not special teams, maybe.
Yeah.
And in the second round, a tight end where position value, same thing. Where if you miss and you pick the low value position and miss, yeesh.
Double win.
That's a double bad.
Yeah.
I understand if you missed on a freak athlete pass rusher because,
Right.
man, if I hit that, I've got Von Miller. That's incredible. But like most analytically driven teams will be more likely to pick the best available player at a premium position. And I'm trying to think, like, that's how the Eagles, like, they're like, we're not passing on Jalen Carter.
Right.
Because that's a disruptor on the defensive line. And then with their next pick, it's like, we don't need edge rushers, but that Nolan Smith at Georgia is a freak athlete. You think we're not taking him? You're crazy. And that's how you end up getting the best players at the important positions is you pick them. You don't just – the Cowboys overreacted so bad to what they perceived as their needs. They picked a blocking tight end in the second round and a run stopper in the first round, and then it turned out that they didn't really need either of those things.
That
to
nobody
be really
really
good.
runs anymore, and you need a guy to pass. You know,
And now you're winning because you can throw the ball and take the ball away, and you're
so
not
the guy
run
actually
stoppers.
playing tight end.
To the tight end, yeah.
But that's another story for another day. But let me ask you this: has the league turned to a point where, because like draft picks used to be like a valued commodity, right? And then
They still are. They're probably overvalued more than ever.
like Les Snead a couple years ago when he was with the Rams and they won the Super Bowl, it was kind of like, man, F these picks.
Yeah.
And now you're kind of starting to see more teams like, you know what? Let me gather the dudes who I know can play football. Like, let me gather the veterans. Mm-hmm. Let me get those guys on my football team because honestly, if I draft this guy and he's not ready to go right now, I don't even have as a head coach or a GM or anything. Do I have 3 years to let this guy develop? Because they might fire me. So with draft picks, has that become a little bit more kind of like now, like, yeah, we need them. But if we're picking, for the most part, in the back half of the first round, it's like really, like F these picks, man. Let's go get the player and it's built right now.
I think draft picks are still gold because in a salary cap league, there's just such a massive advantage to finding guys who are good that cost nothing or very, very little. Like the Cowboys, they're getting to the end of it now, but getting cheap labor out of Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, and Trayvon Diggs, woo, that's how you can spend whatever you need to fix the rest. But it has reached a point where finally the Cowboys got involved in this game, finally, where teams, depending on where they are as a team and where a player is as a player or in his career arc or whatever, you got to get Stephon Gilmore for a fifth-round pick because he's towards the end and he costs a bunch of money and we don't think we're really chasing a Super Bowl. And you're like, oh, I am. What's it going to cost? A fifth-round pick. Pew! Thanks. Do it twice every offseason. I can do it. And they did. They did it twice. Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore. So, yeah, I think it's both of those things. And nowadays, I think if you go off of, like, you can find a draft point chart online. And is it right? No. But is it in the general ballpark? Kind of. Every team has their own now, all different ones. Because it turns out that most picks, depending where you are, because this is a math equation. Mm-hmm. What you do is give me the history of the NFL draft and give me the fifth overall picks and show me what their careers look like and give me the odds on this. Now, we can't just pick off that because that would be stupid because every year's different. Now, show me the players that we're talking about. And it's like you're always playing this game, but it turns out that at different spots in those charts, picks are overvalued, undervalued, whatever, and the smartest teams just take advantage of where teams are wrong. And that's what they do.